Dorian Blake, a brilliant but eccentric book hunter and self-confessed bibliomaniac, heads the small firm Blake Associates Literary Investigations in San Francisco. From their loft-style office on Clementina Street, Dorian and his teammates track missing manuscripts, authenticate dubious discoveries, and navigate a shadow world of collectors, auction sharks, and occult bibliophiles. Each case is a mystery whose solution hinges on deep book lore, forensic bibliography, and treacherous human motives. Main cast: Dorian Blake, the book hunter, polyglot bibliographer, eidetic memory for typefaces and watermarks, wry humor, caffeinated, allergic to sunlight and Kindle screens. Meera Patel, forensic archivist and conservator, unflappable, carries pH strips like others carry pepper spray. Leo Zhang, ex-NSA cybersecurity whiz turned rare metadata analyst, geek swagger, sneakerhead. Clara Reyes, field investigator, ex-art crime detective, SFPD, hardcore hobbyist, distrusts collectors but loves bookstores. Professor Giles Harrow, Dorian's retired mentor, Cambridge codecologist, consulting from a cluttered Telegraph Hill apartment. Absent-minded, encyclopedic, droll emails at 3 a.m. Episode 1. The Phantom Grimoire, a Blake and Associates Codex Chronicle. The Loft. The ceiling fan in Dorian Blake's loft office revolved with the languor of a lazy compass needle, nudging damp San Francisco air through canyons of teetering review copies. The space occupied the top floor of an 1890s cannery, its brick walls whitewashed but still freckled with rust ghosts, its bare joists strung with Edison bulbs that glowed like low-hanging planets. Shafts of pearly fog slanted through the warehouse windows and launched dust motes into slow constellations over a desk already legendary in book dealer gossip. Vellum scraps curled like autumn leaves, fountain pens bleeding dark puddles, dented tins of Russian caravan tea, and, because life is comedy, a brass, Sherlock-style magnifier shaped exactly like a bakery scone. Somewhere beneath that chaos, Blake himself, a lean figure in rolled-up shirt sleeves, copper-brown hair collapsing in plausible neglect, sat motionless, eyes half-closed, listening to the hush the way a safecracker listens for tumblers. He called such moments still points, brief islands before the day's tide crashed in. The hush shattered. Footsteps, brisk, certain, unembarrassed by purpose, crossed the concrete. Meera Patel strode in, dark braid bouncing against a lab coat long since promoted to field jacket. With a snap, she stripped a blue nitrile glove from her hand and let it twang into the trash. "Your 9:30, she announced, "is 3 hours late." Blake did not look up. "Then I am, by definition, precisely on time." Meera opened her mouth. She had a sermon on time management prepared, but a ship's bell clanged from the wall-mounted monitor. The tone was sampled from a decommissioned British dreadnought. Leo claimed the resonance inspired focus. On-screen text bloomed. Dr. Sebastian Crow, Crow Ventures/Private. Leo Salgado rolled his chair across the polished floor, pushing horn-rimmed glasses up his nose. "Billionaire bio-pharma goth," he murmured, delight fighting horror. "Fancy." Blake tapped accept. A firelit study materialized, oak panels polished to mirror gloom, calfskin law books ranked like infantry, and stuffed ravens frozen mid-core along a marble mantel. One could almost smell peat smoke and expensive melancholy. In the foreground stood a man sculpted from midnight linen, tailored in Blackfriars, Blake guessed. Silver hair, a precise blade, above eyes unnervingly calm. Even through video compression, his presence weighed like deep water. "Mr. Blake," Dr. Crow began, voice velvet draped over steel. "Apologies for the hour. My estate archivist is indisposed." "Condolences," Blake offered, still half within that private still point. "Indisposed sounds terminal." "Possibly." The corner of Crow's mouth barely twitched. "He collapsed after showing me an empty case that should have held Lux Tenebris, Voss's 1655 grimoire." The name struck Blake like cold water. He leaned forward, muscles uncoiling. "First edition? Folio or quarto?" "Quarto. 68 leaves, original goatskin over beveled oak. I paid 6.2 million at Hammersmith last April." Behind Blake, Clara Havelock, security expert and lockpick savant, currently perched on the arm of a sofa, threading paracord through brass tension wrenches, let out a low, appreciative whistle. Crow's gaze flicked sideways as though someone unseen had entered the study. When he spoke again, his voice had lowered half an octave. "Retrieve it, discreetly, and I'll double your usual fee. One caution, Mr. Blake. Everyone who has handled that book since Voss has died under peculiar circumstances. My archivist's heart simply—" He tapped gloved fingers over his own sternum. Stopped. The video feed warbled. Static marched across the image like ants around sugar. Then the call severed. Leo released a syllable that could have been prayer or profanity. "So, the book kills," he said to no one in particular. "Great. I'll draft the waiver and a next of kin packet." Blake slid a jeweler's loop into his waistcoat pocket, a motion at once answer and battle cry. "Pack pH strips, Mira. Clara, sharpen your picks. We're paying Fogcrest Manor a visit." Fogcrest Manor. Fogcrest Manor crouched on a Pacific Heights promontory like an apology no one dared rescind, part Gothic villa, part storm cloud. Turrets rose above cypress trees in barbed silhouettes. Gargoyles spat rainwater onto a circular drive where a chauffeured limo idled, windows as black as secrets. Beneath a weeping cedar, Agnes Reed, Crow's solicitor, waited in a charcoal trench coat whose severe tailoring mirrored her smile. "Dr. Crow is detained at a board meeting," she said, voice clipped enough to cut glass. "I will escort you to the archive." Mira's nose twitched. She caught the sterile scent of legal stationery and bergamot. Leo caught Wi-Fi SSIDs and encrypted beacons like a birdwatcher collects calls. Clara collected sightlines, counting 7 exterior cameras, 10 blind spots, one gardener who watched them too carefully. Marble steps carried them beneath the manor into a vault humming with negative pressure air. Cases of low-iron glass glowed beneath museum LEDs. One stood open, its crushed velvet cradle bearing only the ghost indent of a quarto volume. Mira swept a UV torch. Droplets flared neon across the velvet. "Dry canine blood," she diagnosed. "Weird." "Voss experimented on dogs," Blake said absently. "Someone's staging theatrics." On a work table rested a loose ex libris plate, an Ouroboros devouring a quill, Latin motto in tenebris, lux. Leo ran a handheld scanner. "RFID-C'd," he said. "Last ping 3 hours ago. Sutro Baths ruins." Clara plotted routes inside her skull. Public park, easy extraction, easier getaway. "Or a clifftop sacrifice," Blake countered. "We chase the sunset." Agnes Reed looked as though she might protest. Instead, she simply folded her arms and said, "Time is not on your side, Mr. Blake." "It rarely is," Blake replied, and led the charge back up. Sutro Baths. Twilight painted the ruins in bruise-colored stripes. The Sutro Baths, once an opulent glass-roofed natatorium, lay broken, tidal pools reflecting a sky already bruised toward night. Waves hammered basalt arches with judicial fury. On a concrete platform where bathers once sunned, a solitary figure knelt beside an aluminum travel case, chanting syllables that hissed like steam on stone. Clara steadied binoculars. Female, athletic build, extremities track record temp. She's calm. The chant ceased. Stop right there, Blake. Mist peeled away to reveal Natalia Corvin, the Raven, Europe's most notorious rare book thief. She wore a black raincoat that cracked like a wing when the wind shifted. I knew Crow would send you, she called, voice riding the surf. He collects what he cannot comprehend. And you steal what you comprehend too well, Blake replied, stepping forward, hands visible, fingers splayed to show no weapon, only intent. Corvin's mouth curved. Call it curatorship. Voss inscribed an alchemical recipe on leaf 66, suspending animation. The world isn't ready for that page. She flipped open the case. Under her penlight, the saturated vellum shimmered sickly green. Clara whispered, Stall her. Ranger patrol passes in 5. I'll time the grab. Blake inhaled fog thick with kelp and ozone. The recipe killed Voss, he said, voice steady. Mercury vapors. Progress, Corvin answered, requires casualties. At that instant, Leo's phone shrieked. The Poe Raven croak he'd set the night before after 2 espressos. Corvin flinched, slammed the case, bolted toward the precipice. Clara launched, shoulder low, steel sang. The case skidded, teetered, and plunged into a mirror-black pool. The sound, schlup, was heartbreak. Corvin twisted free, sprinted up a shattered stair. Blake knelt, pulse deafening. Vellum's resilient if we move now, Mira urged. Blake swallowed grief. Then let's move. They tore down to the tide pool. Salt spray froze their cheeks, barnacles scraped knuckles. Together they heaved the case from water, flipping latches with trembling fingers. Lux Tenebris emerged dripping, pages clinging like fish scales. Clara glanced up the cliff. Corvin was gone. Only gulls watched. The long night. Hours later in the loft, industrial fans roared, blotting paper carpets soaked up brine, and the smell, iodine, wet leather, centuries of dust now awake, filled the air. Mira, goggles down, guided the tome through a deionized bath, coaxing salts from parchment. Pigments bled midnight blues into the tray. Prussian blue is sacrificing itself, she said, reverently. Text block intact. Blake exhaled, shoulders unclenching. I owe you a first-growth Bordeaux and possibly a small island. At a standing desk, Leo incanted code, brute-forcing Corvin's burner beacon. Ping just hit Monterey. She's licking wounds. Blake opened Lux Tenebris. Wet parchment felt alive, faint metallic odor, mercury memory. Leaf 66, arcane diagrams, cipher ending mid-sentence, then fresh ink shaking like candle flame. Not meant for Crow. Protect the book or more will die. A.R. Agnes Reed, Mira said, voice thin. The loft lights died. Servers exhaled like stricken whales. Darkness swallowed them. From the stairwell down the hall, a heavy metallic clang reverberated. Clara's surefire flashlight carved a tunnel through black. Agnes Reed stood halfway down, trenchcoat soaked, a taser trembling in her fist. "Give me the book," she rasped. "Your note asked us to protect it," Blake said. "Crow." Her voice cracked around the name. "He's dying. He believes Voss's elixir will preserve him, no matter the collateral." Boots thundered below. 2 masked guards climbed. Reed hurled Blake the taser. "Run!" What followed felt like dream logic edged by panic. Clara met the first guard shoulder on, momentum hurling both into a railing. Leo swung an aluminum boom mic stand, sparks pinwheeled off Kevlar. Mira hammered elevator buttons. Dead, of course. Blake hugged the half-dried tome, sprinted for the fire escape. Outside, an icy wind knifed across tar paper. Rooftops. San Francisco shimmered below, high-rises stabbing luminous holes in fog. Alarms yelped, sirens argued. The team dashed across rooftops linked by dubious planks installed years ago for just such emergencies. Clara limped, ankle protesting the earlier tussle. A guard emerged from a skylight, pistol up. Mira's lab-honed aim sent a half-liter bottle spinning. It struck temple bone with surgical finality. The guard folded. "Uber won't collect from here," Leo gasped. "Subterranean Plan B," Blake snapped. They slid down a drainpipe into an alley stinking of sourdough steam and garbage day. Behind recycling bins, a padlocked door waited. Blake's Victorian skeleton key, forged from a retired printing plate, fit sweetly. They ducked into a brick tunnel once used by gold rush smugglers, lights flickering like reluctant fireflies. Safe room. The tunnel ended beneath their building in a concrete chamber lined with steel shelves and positive pressure filters. The safe room. Blake slammed the 12-bolt door. Silence pooled, thick as ink. Reed slumped against a wall. "I planted the dog blood to spook Crow. Buy time." "Corvin lifted the book anyway," Clara growled, massaging her ankle. "Crow hired her weeks ago," Reed said, "then stiffed her. She saw leverage." Blake laid Lux Tenebris on an archival cradle, pages exhaling secrets older than railroads. "We finished stabilizing, then digitized Leaf 66. Leo set up a DSLR rig with raking LEDs. Across the Atlantic, in a study equal parts library and tornado, scholar Giles Harrow answered their video call, hair like startled dandelion fluff. "Ah, Lux Tenebris," he crowed. "Chased rumors of that rascal 20 years. Harrow squinted at the live feed. Overlay of Voss's natal chart. Ignore glyphs. Read every third Greek letter. Letters glowed, coalesced. Sal Mercurius, non sufficiet. Ordinary mercury will not suffice. Then, cinnabar, flame, ice. Mira translated, voice clinical, calm. Heat mercuric sulfide until fuming, then shock cool, yields mercuric chloride gas. Not immortality, just a quicker obituary. Crow will still try, Reed whispered, cheeks grey. Pier 39. First light bled salmon over the bay, when Leo traced Crow's limo to Pier 39's locked service wharf. Tourist kiosks asleep, sea lions barking like bad brass. Mist hung in shreds as Blake's crew approached along a catwalk slick with algae. At the dock's end stood Crow, back to them, beside a speedboat bristling with greenhouse tanks, a portable generator thrumming. He drew a measured dose into a glass syringe large enough for horses. Natalia Corvin leaned against a piling, compact SMG slung low. The bruising along her cheek looked like spilled wine. "My archivist misread dosage," Crow called without turning. "I shall not." Blake stepped onto the planks, palms raised, a USB drive glinting between fingers. "Digital facsimile," he said. "Study it, test it, patent it if you dare. The original goes to federal conservation. Harm it, and every outlet from the Times to Teen Vogue gets the scans." He tilted his chin at Clara, live streaming via satellite hotspot, crimson wreck eye glowing. Corvin's trigger finger twitched, the SMG's muzzle dipped a lazy arc. Crow finally turned. In dawn light his face looked fragile, skin too tight over bone, eyes shabby with exhaustion. A sick man clinging to myth. "You think data and daylight can hobble desperation?" he asked. "They've clipped grander monsters," Blake answered. Sirens crescendoed, SFPD cruisers and an unmarked CDC van summoned by Reed's quiet tip. Corvin exhaled, weapon clanging onto the planks. Crow sagged as if strings had been cut. Two officers eased him toward custody. A hazmat team in Tyvek approached the chemical tanks with respectful terror. Blake pocketed the USB. Rain began, soft, persistent, like applause from ghosts. Morning after. By mid-morning, the loft smelled of solvent, kelp, and triumph. Lux Tenebris, now sealed in a hermetic transfer box, awaited an armored courier to the Library of Congress. Insurance forms lay ready, signatures gathered like pilgrims at Lord's. Leo collapsed onto the sagging sofa. "Day one," he groaned, "and we're on a billionaire's hit list. That has to be a record, even for us." Mira peeled off gloves. "But we set a personal best for saltwater mold remediation. Celebrate the small wins." Clara, ankle bandaged, raised a paper cup of espresso. "To Blake and Associates. May our books be rare and our enemies predictable." Blake allowed himself a thin smile, brushing eraser crumbs from his lapel. "Predictable enemies," he echoed. "In this profession, there's no such addition." He clapped his hands, once, sharp, like a stage manager cueing curtain rise. "Now, who's hungry for dim sum and a side of witness statements?" Foghorns moaned beyond the windows, sounding less like warnings than invitations. Somewhere in that grey expanse, another mystery waited, bound in calfskin and trouble, penciled already into Blake's calendar.